I've been trying to think lately more and more about what pulls people towards different things. And one of those things for you seems to be minimalism. And what was the
Mm.
thing that pulled you toward that?
Hmm. I okay, so my journey kind of exposed to that was I watched the Minimalist documentary. It's called Minimalism. And I just thought it was fascinating how people were living alternatively. So taking it even outside of minimalism. And as I really explored that and explored people kind of like in that space that speak a lot about it, such as the minimalists or like Colin Wright, people like that, I just loved how they were challenging the status quo. And they were talking about minimalism, but yet like their relationships were different. They had like different alternative relationships, or just their careers were different. And so at the end of the day, though, minimalism seemed to kind of break things down and kind of be like the underlying kind of commonality amongst these different topics in a way. And so I just love the intentionality behind things. Like I believe that I try and create an intentional life. I'm intentional with my time, my energy. And so just like my things. And so when I began learning about these things, I ended up going to Australia, and I just did an experiment of just traveling with just a carry-on. So like I booked a one-way ticket and I was moving to Australia, but I tried to just keep my items to like just a carry-on bag. And the liberation and the freedom I felt from that was amazing. And so now I have an apartment, and like clearly I have way more stuff than a carry-on,
You
but
need
it's
plants.
just and plants. There's more over here. You just can't see them. So it's just, I guess, the intentionality behind it. And like I just try and keep that throughout my life now with physical items or relationships that I bring into my life. I really try and break it down to the essentials in a way. Did that
Hmm.
answer it?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. It's,
It's a
I,
bit tangent-y, but I
that's
hope I
fine.
got there.
That's what we're here for. Yeah.
Okay.
It's so the Indian caste system I found really interesting in the same vein as minimalism. As you get higher up in the caste system, you become higher and higher to the potentiation of enlightenment. And something that you have to do to attain enlightenment in some perspective, I guess, is to have more than you actually need. And only once you get to that point, then can you attain enlightenment. So it's kind of this process in which you go from essentially you're just very poor, or you're a slave wage, or you're a wage slave, or actually a slave. And then over time, through different reincarnations, you level up and level up and level up through this karmic debt. And over time, you get to a point where you enter into a life in which you're very affluent, or you're born into an affluent family. And from there, you can attain enlightenment. But a big part of enlightenment is the realization that you don't need the things that are around you materialistically. And uh, the root the root the root idea of Buddhism would be that suffering comes from desire, or
Mm.
desire is the root of suffering. And so I always found that so interesting with minimalism, is that the people that tend to undergo the philosophy of minimalism tend to accumulate so many things, and only once they've accumulated them and realized that the desire for more things is the root of their suffering, is that's when they break away. And that's the proverbial Buddhist enlightenment.
I that's what was happening. Like I worked in retail. I worked at like Aritzia, and so it was very much about like it's a whole culture. And so I was like in the thick of it. And yeah, that was the thing. I had a lot of money at the time. I don't have that much money now. And I was buying all these clothes and things like that. And just even just these little things of like my appearance, I just put so much value in that. And then once I started to like let go of these items and realizing that, yeah, my joy isn't found in those, my joy is found in experiences, especially with the people I love, or like coffee. I love coffee. And just really letting go of that, it's so crazy. Or something that I always think about is the minimalists always say this is like, I have a lot of like childhood memories and things like that, or like trinkets and things from my childhood. And I find that's the hardest thing sometimes to let go of. And they always say like the memories are in the memories, not in the things. And so it's almost just like it's like, as much as I'm like, oh, okay, I'm a minimalist, whatever, it's a constant reevaluation, and like it's constantly going through things again, and just also questioning like, why am I holding on to this so much, or why is it so hard to let go of? And Yeah, I don't know if that kind of took us off course, but I completely agree with what you said. I think that was beautiful.
In the, last summer, my friend Nathan Paisley, I was on his farm on Victoria Island, and the whole weekend he'd been drinking from this beautiful turquoise mug, and his grandfather or his great grandfather had made this mug by hand,
Wow.
and it had these unbelievable carvings, and it was all written in old Germanic, and it was just gorgeous. And as I was leaving, he came up to me and said, "Hey, do you want this mug?" And I told him no. It's like, dude, get away from me. And I just started laughing. Like, there's no way that I'm taking that mug. And the way that he saw it was that if he if he develops too much attachment to something, I think that's the
Mm,
implicit assumption from his, is that if he develops too much attachment, then that's something that can in turn inflict suffering on him at some point. So when he develops too much attachment to something, he just gives it away.
wow.
Yeah, or he'll do some type of grand gesture where he'll just kind of get rid of the thing, as to say, I am my being in myself, and as I am myself, I don't need to have this thing outside of me to ascribe being to me. And
Mm.
so that was very intense for me. And after I got home, I messaged him and said, "Hey, I would love to take that mug from you the next time I see you, if that's something that you still want." But it was very interesting in the moment, because I was kind of like, man, you're going to do this to me right now? I do not want your great grandfather's hand carved, beautiful German mug.
Eh, There's also, oh, I could go a different route with that,
Hmm.
like point of we should I go there? I was a
Yeah, do
counter.
it.
Like
Do
sometimes
it.
we put, and I know that your friend didn't, and I know you would appreciate this, but like this is another point that I find so interesting in minimalism. It's like we say someone was to pass away, like your grandma was to pass away, and she has this apartment or house full of items, and then when she passes away, we like inherit all of these items. But at the end of the day, like I think we hang on to them. And I'm saying this because this is what I've done in the past. And I often hang on to things because I feel obliged to. And at the end of the day, the items are really weighing me down, whether it's financially or just more energetically and psychologically, of just knowing that they're there and like, oh man, I haven't sat on my grandma's chair for a while. I should really do that. And so it's really just, that's been another thing, is it's just so freeing and liberating. Because also too, at the same time, you don't feel that guilt. Like I love my grandma or whoever it may be. And as I said, the memory isn't in all of her items. Her memories are like here. So, yeah, I think there's something definitely to that. And we have this consumeristic culture that it's just more, 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 which doesn't help as well.